Hello everybody. My name is Sean Moore. I am the manager of special projects and initiatives at CAGCA, the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. Thank you so much for joining us today for youth engagement coast to coast. I have with us here today Christy Zamani and Lorianne Novello. Will be doing a more thorough introduction of them later, but I'm really excited for today's webinar. It's planned to be very interactive, so I'm hoping everyone will be ready to chat out some answers, give some examples, and really be engaged with our presentation on youth engagement. Christy, could you advance the slide?
Absolutely.
So this webinar is being conducted as part of a grant that's been set up by SAMHSA, the State Targeted Response Technical Assistance Consortium grant. And so this was created in response to the opioid epidemic and has become the foundation for the greater opioid response network. And we are here to assist state targeted response grantees, any community members, any organization whose work touches upon the opioid crisis. We offer free technical assistance, and that's available on request at the website I'm about to show you in just 1 second. And so we do have a huge network of experienced consultants, both prevention specialists, prevention coalition leaders, doctors, nurse assistants, like a whole gamut of medical professionals with more than 2 years experience prescribing medications for addiction and are quite adept at treating opioid use disorder and other substance use disorders. And a wonderful recovery community who has experience helping people work with organizations and organizations work with people on all things related to the recovery from opioid use. We do accept technical assistance requests, training requests, and really all of our work is done by those requests. If you could advance the slide, I believe we have contact information. So there it is, opioidresponsenetwork.org. Our lead organization on this grant project is the American Academy of Addiction Psychiatry. So anytime you need to contact us, we are at orn@AAAP.org. And you can see the phone number on the screen. If we could advance the slide, this work is being conducted as part of a federal grant, and it's important to note that the views expressed here on our PowerPoint today are mine and those of Christy and Lori, and they do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Health and Human Services. And we could probably advance through the next 2 slides. And so today on the webinar as a participant, you are muted by default. We won't be making use of the raise hand function that you might see at the bottom of your screen, depending on the version of Zoom that you're using. But if you'd like to send a general comment to the whole group, please do make use of the chat function, and please, please, please make use of the Q&A function, which comes directly to myself and Christy and Lori. You're muted by default again, so we won't hear you speaking into the mic, and we will be addressing questions and sort of engaging in discussion periodically throughout today's webinar. So just a reminder that chat function is right there. You might have to mouse over your Zoom window to get that to pop up. You could advance the slide. We will be sending out the PDF for today's presentation shortly after the webinar. It might be early next week as I try to organize a few things in the office. Please email me, Sean Moore, smore@cadca.org if you have any questions or about upcoming opioid response network prevention webinars. We have a couple that are being planned for after CAGCA's large annual conference, which is coming up quickly. And they're very exciting webinars, but they're not currently announced. So I'd love to include you as we announce those. And so again, we just have amazing presenters, amazing leaders of youth and trainers, people who can build and strengthen youth in their communities with us today. Christy Zamani is the executive director of Day One and brings over 18 years of culturally competent experience in dynamic and diverse nonprofit organizational settings. She works with community-based organizations, higher educational institutions, local businesses. She's a graduate and former student body president of the California State University, Long Beach. She served as Day One's executive director since 2007, sharing her hands-on experience in environmental public policy, community health, innovative marketing, and youth leadership development. Christy's passion lies in empowering disenfranchised communities, amplifying the youth voice, and advancing public health. Christy has helped develop and improve programs and policies that strengthen the health of all populations, and especially those at the greatest risk. Lorianne Novello is the executive director for Lindy Cares, which is a grassroots 501c3 nonprofit founded in 2014. The coalition strives to weave prevention messaging into the fabric of daily life to reduce the misuse of drugs and alcohol by youth. At Lindy Cares, youth implement campaigns and interventions to affect community level change. Lori began her career by enlisting in the Marine Corps, and after 6 years returned to New York to earn her degree in Health and Human Services and a drug and alcohol counselor credential. In the spirit of strong community engagement, Lori is an elected library trustee, connecting residents with professional services, and she serves on the board of the Contractors for a Cause, and for the past 14 years has been instrumental in fundraising over $1.2 million for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. She's currently slated to complete her MSW in May 2021. Lori will continue to work on policy and community services to assist in empowering youth to create change and reach their potential. So without further ado, I'll kick it over. I believe, Christy, you're up.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. It's so exciting to be here with you today. Thank you for the introduction, Sean. Lorianne and I are super excited to talk about youth engagement with all of you. And at the core and heart of this presentation, I think we can all agree that we truly believe that youth have a right to participate in the decisions that impact them. And we hope that today's presentation shows you how valuable that core fundamental belief is if it's held within our organizations, and to really see youth as the valued stakeholders who can bring creativity, innovation, and effective solutions into the prevention work that we're trying to do to make progress in our communities. So in doing this work, there's several topics of conversation that we'll be covering today, and we're really hoping to get through many of the slides quickly to provide space for us to chat and talk about best practices, and also provide some TA to areas you might be struggling with that we can help with. But this is just a range for you to see what kind of topics we'll be covering, from benefits of youth, engaging youth in prevention efforts, what roles they can play, how to effectively recruit and retain youth, some examples of how we can engage youth in the policy work, best practices for meaningful engagement, potential challenges, which there's always several, and the importance of celebrations. So this should just give you an idea of what we'll be covering. And if there's something you really want us to cover that you don't see on this list, please let us know. And if we can, we will definitely try to plug it in. So let's start with this slide. And this really is, what are some opportunities to get youth engaged? And as you see, there's several. From service, which means how can I get kids plugged into community service right away? Many schools have this as a requirement. How can you make it useful for you? By plugging in with school districts and saying they can be with us. They can work with us on public policies and prevention work that we're doing internally. By providing leadership opportunities to develop and grow. By plugging them into decision-making roles for governments. You could do this at a school board level as well as city council level. So really just that idea of shared governance and letting youth know that their voice matters. Philanthropy's on here because I'll tell you, as someone who works with 98% population of youth that are below the poverty level, it's really interesting to place them in a role that they still find that they have something to give back, even if it's not monetary, through their time and activism and through their community service and their voice. So it's a very empowering opportunity to give to students. Civic engagement, plugging them into anywhere where decisions are being made, again, from city master plans to zoning discussions to the number of liquor licenses are being distributed, making sure youth voice is there and that they're representing the communities that they live in. Now with media, we do a lot of media training with our youth, and they are sometimes I would say majority of the time, the most impactful voice during a press conference. We recently had a press conference called Spot the Pot around Halloween, showing how edibles are mimicking youth treats like Cheetos and Goldfish, and for students to say that this is on a regular being passed around on school campuses in their voice really made a huge impact and made it to several news channels, and definitely elevated the discussion. Now in organizing, deciding what direction we're going to go in the community and where we want to put our energy. And lastly, but very important, in research and evaluation. As prevention providers and people who use evidence-based approaches, I'll say all of us use data. And we were implementing the life skills program, and we're in our 11th year of doing so. For some time working with our evaluator, we could not understand why the data showed that drug use was actually looking like it increased by the end of the program versus improving. After consulting with youth, we realized that they were coming in so nervous to share the truth of their use. And it wasn't until the end of the program, which is a month long, that they realized they felt safe and comfortable to be really candid with us about the drugs they were using, where they were accessing them, how early on they tried it. So we worked with evaluators to adjust the evaluation model and just did a post-evaluation. And we realized how impactful the program really was being. So again, using youth as a sounding board really can strengthen the progress of your program and how we're measuring our progress as organizations. So benefits of youth engagement. Let's see. Pop these up all together. So we can do youth engagement in many ways, but that word meaningful is everything to it. And I'm sure, Laura, you can speak to this, but in the work that we're doing, you can just roll out your program and hope that it goes well, or you take the steps necessary to make sure that you're conducting a very meaningful program that's going to have positive effects. And if you're doing it right, you'll see that alcohol consumption, smoking, recreational drug use, behavior, school delinquency, emotional problems, and dropout all should reduce. So meaningful youth engagement is the core of our work. Lori.
Okay, so I'm Lori Novello. Welcome everybody, thank you for coming. I think one of the things that I want to touch upon right away is the meaningful. Christy just covered. Giving youth a voice is one of our main themes of our program, and we always try to finish it with the sentence, "and listening," because the youth have a lot to say. And by cultivating a group of youth that become the peer experts, we find that we get more youth to try to use these youth as their role models. It's kind of important that youth send the message, because people perk up. We've seen it across the board with politicians, law enforcement. When the youth speak, everyone listens. So we can't drive home enough the point of getting your youth to be the ones that are sending out the message. I'm ready for the next slide. So the youth roles, they have taken on all the roles. Our youth organization, we have one on the middle school level and one on the senior high school level. One of the things we find with people, they say they have a hard time getting involved in the schools. And the way that we handled that was to start youth clubs. We hired facilitators through the school system so that they meet after school. When you do this kind of program after school, you get a lot more freedom and you don't have to, cope too much with teachers' unions and stuff like that. But just keep in mind that sometimes you have to be creative that way and really hone in on what the stumbling blocks are to getting something into the school. Sometimes it's simple as, making sure that you hire a facilitator from the school to help you get this program taken care of. So our youth actually hold up, they make their own elections and they have their own board of directors. And that's basically become our governing board. We don't turn any youth away. We're on a rolling admission because we do different things throughout the year, and different teams and are busy during different courses of the year. So we really try to engage representatives from the different clubs and teams at the school as well, not forcing everyone to join and come to every meeting. So we look for commitment, but we still allow rolling admission. So everybody is pretty much familiar with the way that, we're going to be doing this. The opportunities are very enticing to parents when they're looking at the time that they're going to allow their children to spend with different organizations. They're often looking for the community service, something that's going to benefit the students in the long term. So we do a lot of skill building. We use as local resources as often as we can. And we use something called Long Island Teen Institute, and that helps develop the self-esteem and the level of confidence that these students need to do their own presenting. And recognition. Recognition is another thing that we get a lot of involvement from other outside organizations as well. We look for the Youth Police Explorers, and we look for the other missions, and we try to align them with ours. Stepping out of our comfort zone sometimes to expand into the different pieces of the community has really paid off for us. We always try to look at the issues from their perspective, and it's really gone a long way. What turned out to be a small partnership with our police explorers turned out to be that they come to almost every single one of our events and provide security, and we make sure that we give out certificates of recognition for all of this activity.
So we wanted to spend some time to speak about recruiting and retaining youth. And the main point here is be interesting and relevant. Student outreach, nothing is more valuable than time, just like Lorianne just mentioned. And this holds exactly true for youth leaders, just as it does to us. For those of you who work with youth, you know that they are super busy and overstressed, like their parents and us. So it's making sure that if they're going to give you their time, that they feel valued and that it was worthwhile. So something we wanted to share with you here is these are some questions to explore with your team to get very clear on who you're trying to reach. So who's your target participants? Where would you find them? Why would they get involved and give you their time? What's in it for them? How will this make their lives better? And you want to prove it. And that means like giving some examples of some of the successes of your previous alumni and how some of those experiences have helped propel people forward to maybe future jobs, internships, leadership roles. So sharing some of those examples. And if they show up in your program, is your program interesting enough to bring them back for more? And again, this goes right back to us. If we give our time to go to a community meeting or commission meeting, if the meeting's good and you feel like it's really going in a direction, you are going to show up the next week or the next time to have a meeting. But if it's poorly organized and it really isn't worth your time, do you go back? I certainly don't. So it's really thinking, how can we be appealing enough to make them feel good about being there and wanting to come back again. Lori.
So recruitment strategies, I put a few in the chat. We generally send an envoy to the orientation at the 6th grade assembly. In our school, in 6th grade, they cannot join clubs and teams. we've seen a trend in our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade coalition that a lot of students who are in special education department are joining the coalition because we are able to offer them some community service opportunities that are usually taken by students who are in, say, National Honor Society and stuff like that. So we've really opened the door. And we were lucky when we did put out the job requirement for the youth facilitators, 2 social workers responded. So our students are always under the care of the social workers, and we've worked really hard by even having flash mobs and stuff like that to make the social workers really accessible to all of the students. One of the things that really, the students love leadership opportunities. So during the recruitment, we always show the advocacy training, and they really do love to go out into the community and talk to everyone. So that's a big part of our program. One of the things we do is we teach them to present peer-to-peer on the current issue, which last year was vape. And they kind of became experts and took the whole thing from beginning to end, including an evaluation. And we saw a slight rise in vape use in our 2019 data. It went up to 13% reported 30-day use rate as compared to 2016, where we had a 5% use rate. But our very program happened to be picked up. The county is now doing that to all the schools because it worked. It really worked. We really think that we didn't see the huge increase in the nicotine vape that was kind of trending throughout the nation because of all the outreach that we did youth to youth. So we wanted to just take a minute and see if anybody wanted to just throw some ideas up on the chat to tell us what they're seeing in their neighborhoods. I did mention a few of our challenges as far as getting into the schools, and I wanted to know if anybody else had any insight on that. Is everybody having any trouble getting to the webinar chat button? At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little bubble that you can click on.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to read out some of what I'm seeing there, Lori. One challenge is taking up class time. Like, how do we get class time from the school? Ooh, there's a lot coming in now.
Actually, I think, you know what, I'd like to address that class time because that's a big deal. And I wanted to tell you, in my introduction, you see how we try to weave it into the everyday fabric. That's our ultimate goal. And I think we're going to talk about the implementation of some evidence-based programs like life skills. Chrissy's been doing it longer than I have. But what we're finding is we're kind of leveraging that kind of programming in with the competitive nature of people, because what happened in our school, we had a 5-year implementation plan on evidence-based that we were providing, and the teachers determined that they could do a little bit better. We ended up adding an elective to our health classes that's done within the school that has to do with prevention. And they're starting to use books at the library when they're doing like book talks and stuff like that. They're using books with real world examples that kind of relate to this. So again, what we try to do, Chrissy and I are going to cover this a little bit later. She has a bait and educate slide, but I also call it camouflaging. We literally camouflage the message of prevention into the day-to-day, and that's what's actually working for us. We do it in a health and wellness way, and we do it through the educational programs as well. So that's a really good question and a good point about taking class time. The kids are overstretched as it is. Even when we do something that's supposed to make them happy and calm them, say we do like a yoga or a meditation night, we're so careful in planning it so as not to cause stress around exam time. So that was a really good point from one of our attendees.
Throwing out a couple more related to time, and there's a couple similar comments here. the students who want to be involved are involved in everything. They have 10 after school activities, so they might be overcommitted. So that's very related to time. A similar one is getting direction from school leadership saying that maybe only the honor roll students could be involved. Another point that I'm seeing echoed a little bit is transportation. Like if I'm in a more rural area, how do I keep my students after school if the buses leave at a certain time?
Yeah, we have a late bus, so we're kind of lucky. And I just say from Mario Irvin, she said getting you to participate. You know, we are lucky. We have the National Guard Counter Drug Task Force local. I don't know if you guys have that, but one of the things we did a lot of environmental scans, and we just used the simple sticky notes, those yellow stickers, and we allow the students to put their environmental observations on those, and then we just fill a whole wall with them, and we sort them out later. This ensures that it's anonymous, and once they see some progress, all you need is just a little bit to show them that you're making some progress. We've seen them open up a lot more. In our neighborhood, the problem are the parents. They don't want to open things up. They're very cautious about internet-based stuff. So we pretty much do everything pen and paper, and those sticky notes really get the participation going, because who's afraid to write what they want to say on a sticky note? And once the students start to trust us, it's open. We do a lot of key informant interviews, and we have nice conversations. And as long as you respect them and you don't, you know, we don't do a lot of big media campaigns from private stuff that we learn about. We start to come up with an action plan, and we take action, and then we highlight our results, not necessarily our issues. And that really helps in the neighborhood as well. Nobody wants to hear about the issues until you have a solution.
And this is Christy. I wanted to touch on a couple other issues that came up. I know transportation is a constant for everybody as far as how do the kids get home and at a good time. We meet off campus, and I conduct our meetings weekly, and we start right at 4 o'clock and we're done by 5:30. And we do that purposely because many of our kids in our community need to walk through the projects to get home, which could be unsafe. So one of the things we're looking at is providing free metro passes and bus passes as an incentive to be involved as a youth advocate, as well as working with the city to really identify safe routes home. Like where do we have safe routes that we know are better lit that we can promote, and also do ride sharing with some parents. So there's always a number of challenges around that, but then it also provides this opportunity to come together as a community to see how we're going to do this. One meeting that we host is the first Wednesday of every month. It's called the Youth Network Meeting. And we partner with about 6 different youth serving agencies to bring all the kids together. And it's really neat because the indirect benefit has been, we know there's some other organizations that own their own shuttles. And it's created such a deep friendship and partnership between us that they're willing to share the shuttles during the week with us as well. So again, trying to work with each other to address some of these issues. Also, a couple questions back, someone said, there was a comment about, do we require our students to take a drug-free pledge to be a part of our program? We share what our expectations are and what our hopes are for the kids, but the honest truth is if I find out, like if I know one of our kids is using marijuana, there's no way I would kick them out of our program. For me, those are the kids that need to be there. So we work with everybody where they're at. If they're showing up, it's saying that they're trying to make a change, and I see us as a safe place to help them do that.
Yeah, we're the same way. But when we do we do have the leadership retreat where they go away for a few days, and we ask them to, to not be actively engaging in any substances if they're going to be participating in that. But they're certainly welcome to be on committees and do all kinds of stuff. We ask the leaders to, to take that full pledge. I've had parents come back and inform me about some of our youth, and I'm like, guys, there's a reason why people gravitate to this organization. So we just, again, we need everybody where they're at. That's what we do. And a lot of the kids that are just on the cusp of maybe, having some issues that are, maybe a lot of times in the school, they're soothing something. And the companionship of the older kids putting out the helping hand has brought a few kids away from that very point where they were just about to try a different route. So it's actually, we always have, when our youth are speaking, it's not a message of telling people what to do. It's a message of, we're going to give you the facts. This is what we found out. It becomes almost like a civic lesson. The students want to inform the other students, and that was actually a big breakthrough, because that kind of erased all the chances of them getting teased, especially when they were doing the vape presentations. They did a lot of harm reduction so that they could avoid instances where the batteries were blowing up and stuff like that. They were talking to the youth about concealing it. When they turned the presentation into, look what we've uncovered, and it becomes more like a research, it really alleviated a lot of those issues about stepping out in front of your peers. So that's something to think about. They're really, they get out, the kids right now, they get outraged when they see how even the whole thing was rolled out without FDA approval and stuff like that. And they're learning about our government, and it's been quite a journey with them.
Okay, I think some of your other questions we could probably cover in the future slides, so we're just gonna move on if that's okay with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So here's some key outreach approaches that I've used that have worked for us. I love to say bait and educate. That's a staple we say in our office. Prevention meetings are not traditionally the hot selling ticket, but having a treat yourself final party sure is. With help and direction from our youth leaders, we plan events that youth would be interested in attending. Once you get them there, then you can creatively share some important prevention education and share some of the efforts that your organization is really taking the lead on. So let's say for finals, we start talking about, we know through our local marijuana assessment that a majority of our kids use marijuana to relax, to cope with stress. So once we get them here by promoting Treat Yourself Day with an herbal tea bar, beach volleyball, and puppy therapy, free Scantrons, and all the good stuff, then we can talk about, by the way, marijuana is really not a positive coping mechanism, or alcohol. So again, bait and educate. Get them there first. I wouldn't put drug-free events stapled all over your flyer. It's really not going to get many people there, but a really cute picture of a puppy dog might. So be creative. Opportune interventions. There's a number of opportunities to introduce youth to your organization by partnering with mandated programs like Alternatives to Suspension, court-ordered community service, or school-supported credit recovery. This is a great way to connect with kids and really reach the non-traditional joiners. That's been very, very useful for us. And lastly, I would say use youth language. That's a tongue twister. If you want to reach youth, you have to speak their language. So have enticing social media accounts and illustrate what your organization's doing. So we'll get into that with some positive social media tips as well in a sec. So the question, here's another chat, like a little discussion we can have. What kind of activities would youth unfamiliar with your organization attend? What's been helpful? What are some things that have worked for you all, or what do you think they would be interested in?
So with all of the food going on in the chat box right now, I feel there's I feel there's a little bit of a compliment here. Should I get my kids running and doing yoga, or should I get my kids eating? Would you guys comment on that?
They go hand in hand. Give them the food and then let them work it off with some yoga and the 5K run. But honestly, I think this provides a space for really creative partnership, again, with other nonprofit partners. I'll say our organization we operate about 5 different county grants, and one of them is a Healthy Communities grant. So where we're limited in one grant, where we're not allowed to really feed the kids with prevention dollars, that's a barrier for us. That's where the healthy community grant comes in. And so we kick off every youth meeting with a healthy food demo, which is really neat. So kids are learning how to make a really healthy salad on a budget or a wrap. They get to eat. We're advancing one contract before we step right into the next contract, which is, the youth prevention, youth advocate group. So again, find really creative ways to use your money and your partnerships. And I see one comment there is we cannot use grant funds for food. And again, it's finding who can, who has a healthy nutrition grant that you can partner with, maybe at the public health department or another nonprofit that is willing to partner with you to advance both goals. That really has worked well for us. And same thing for yoga. I saw somebody put the question of who does the yoga. Usually the same people who have a, like again, I'm going back to the Healthy Communities Initiative grant for us, is that grant specifically, the goal is to advance healthy activity, like physical fitness, as well as nutrition education. So most of the time, a partner who has that type of grant can also provide your organization with everything from yoga to obstacle courses and all that cool stuff. So again, find some really, see where your gaps are in addressing your program needs, and then find the partners that can fill those gaps. That's really helpful for you.
And dovetailing on that answer, Christy, you've done an amazing job of mentioning these partnerships. And I just want to throw out there that all these partnerships just start with an ask. Depending on the size of your community, you might actually have a dedicated yoga studio or gyms where there is a yoga teacher. These are people who often are dedicated to what they're doing. They're doing this as a part-time job or supplementary income. You could honestly ask them, and if they're doing it out of passion, they might be willing to share that with you. That does apply to yoga, but it also applies beyond that.
I do want to say, so skills, abilities, and knowledge. Yeah, like we can't drive this home enough. First of all, we asked the youth, our first youth board really drove home. They want the truth. They want the truth. They want the knowledge. And then they want to, draw their own conclusions. And like I said, it's become almost like a civic lesson. As far as abilities goes and skill building, that's what we do. When we are teaching them to give the seminars, they're becoming experts in it. We do this youth leadership summit. We started our first year. We brought in professionals from different organizations, health and human services, prevention specialists. We did 4 workshops. It was great. Our second year, they took a back seat and stood by and watched our youth and helped them cultivate the workshops themselves. And by our third year, the youth completely implemented the workshops, and we had skill building, team dynamics, community assessments. And the year that they did everything themselves was probably the most productive. That's where we got a lot of information, because the youth were running it themselves. So all of those things fall into place if you allow the youth to lead. You just have to guide them.
Okay, so we can't talk about youth engagement and leave social media out, even though this isn't a social media session. But these are a couple slides we just wanted to share with you to keep in mind as you move forward. And really it's getting your likes, using hashtags, and make sure you're getting follows. Be likable. That's the note at the end of the day, is what are you doing on social media to get youth attention and create a following for the campaigns and efforts you're doing. So we know the usual social media platforms from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And under these, you'll see I put some quotes from the kids that I've asked, which is really funny. Like they'll say Facebook is for, older people use it. Twitter's cool. I use Instagram for photos and stories. YouTube's for music. So again, understanding how your students are using the social media platforms and where you can plug in. This is a great slide from ComScore. It gives you a breakdown between ages 18 to 24, 25 to 34, and so on, and what platforms are people using the most. Again, this is a national overview, so there's some great free polls that you can do just in locally for your community to see what's going on in your neighborhood. So again, it's a great way to use youth resources and knowledge. They're way better at it than we are. So saying, hey, can you help me set up a poll to see what kids are using today and how? So knowing how to really amplify your campaigns and messages. And then these are some just resources we wanted to share with you, again, to take back as you think about your social media efforts. And this is a great simple tool I use to brainstorm with our youth coalition about when constructing social media accounts, what works and what doesn't, what turns them off. Like if there's gonna be a picture of adults in a meeting, is that exciting? Does that really have a place on a social media account, or should we just avoid it? Instead, do we wanna put, free, or student deals or that they can take advantage of, or what's going to get kids to follow us. So again, think that way. So these are 4 simple steps that I like to use internally in our office, and you all should be more than familiar with it. So it's create a welcoming environment, learn student names and pronouns, introduce them to each other, make sure they feel safe and comfortable to use their voice. Help form organic connections. I was saying about over 90% of the boys that attend our program don't have fathers at home. So they naturally come in and gravitate to my male staff members because they're craving that male mentor or father role model. And we love for that to happen. Really care, keep track of attendance. Again, there's no requirement that you must be at this meeting or we drop you, but it's just letting them know, we noticed that you weren't here, just want to make sure you're okay, we missed you. Again, that's that sweet, authentic way of letting them know you care and that you enjoy having them around. And lastly, build ownership. Make sure students are clear about the mission and that you're using students in all of the planning that we're doing to make sure that we're not spending all these resources and time and putting together these programs that are just not appealing to them. This is Lori.
Okay, so create a safe environment, be real, learn their names. I think you just covered most of this. Environment's kind of important to us because our youth are telling us the kind of environment they want to build. We do use, like I said, a local resource where they go on a retreat, and we noticed that people were more open and honest when they were away from the school setting, and we really brainstormed to get that comfort inside the school buildings, and that was the birth of our Mindful Monday, where we do, other than academic activities inside the school, we had a drum circle, we had a meditation room, and we kind of shifted through. I think Christy mentioned their tea. We had smoothies. So, one of the things, talking to Christy, she's out in Cali and we're here in Long Island in New York, and across everywhere we go, we're all using the same evidence-based practices and theories, but we're putting our personal flares on them. And it's absolutely, it's been enlightening, even looking at all these comments too. So this safe environment thing, we're really able to drive that home. We've done, we have an environmental scan that we've been working on since 2017, targeting this very specific site behind our middle school. There's a creek, trying to figure out who owns the property and stuff, and the youth identified it as a problem space. And we're just on the point of really driving home this point. And once our youth see this come to fruition, I think it's going to just take us to another level. We've identified the owners. We've found some college cooperatives that are willing to train. We're going to take this area that we keep finding hypodermic needles at, and we have documented proof of this from 2017 to 2019, and we're actually on the verge of turning it into a STEM learning center. We're going to have scientists come in and try and help set up some ways that we could use this creek as a classroom. So, that the environmental theory is something that's very big in our neighborhood. They're creating spaces that they believe they can thrive in, and when the ideas come from them, it works better. The next slide is recognition, I think. 32. So this next slide about recognition, it's definitely provides the closure, but the students, it really keeps them motivated. And again, a lot of them are, doing these things because they're trying to build their resumes. So, and I'm talking about higher level stuff. This is where they want to be.
Okay, sorry for that glitch earlier, everyone. The computer froze for a second, so we're back on track. Lorianne and I wanted to share some of our youth-led prevention efforts from coast to coast. So here we go with some examples. Here in Pasadena, something we've been using, I'm sure many of you have, is Photo Voice. And we're finding this is a really, again, affordable for those of you who don't have a huge budget, and yet impactful way to make sure youth voice is being amplified through an exciting and effective way. So again, if you haven't used this evidence-based model, you should. And those of you who have, I'd love to see in the chat box if you could share if you've done it and how successful it's been. These are some stories, again, when kids going out in the community taking pictures of what they're seeing, going back to what Lorianne was saying about like safe environments and nuisance zones, being able to really tell a story of what are you seeing on your way home? What are you seeing in your backyard? How old are you? Where do you go to school? And these are really effective tools when trying to pass policy in city council meetings or in school boards. Another one is using art and advocacy. So we love using art, students love it. So one example is this, the Post-Truth project we started. We've collected over 3,000 cards till now. This is a really simple, again, affordable way to collect youth voices. And we give them a prompt in the front of the card with a postage paid postcard that's already addressed to us. And we say, here's an invitation for you to share how, when, and why alcohol or other drugs have affected your life. And again, it's giving students free range to share through art, through illustrations or poetry. And then we did a great big art exhibit around this that people loved. Project Sticker Shock is another great tool. Our students in the past few years have stickered over 10,000 multi-packs. And traditionally, as many of you know, liquor stores can be seen in an adversarial role. But now that we're working hand in hand with them and building relationships with retailers, knowing that they are part of this community, they are small business owners, how can we work together to make sure our community is safe? So again, we target high risk holidays, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, to really go out and do the stickering. And doing this with the kids really builds their capacity to understand the importance of preventing underage drinking. So this is a great tool. And again, super affordable. Stickers are not that expensive. It's just really staff time. And environmental policy. So, and like Lorianne was saying, environmental scans are highly effective in making sure students are providing input in city master plans, alcohol overlay districts, and city ordinances and policies. So this is great. They love going out there taking pictures and saying why we don't need another liquor store or why we don't need another fast food restaurant, whatever it might be in their community, but really advocating for positive emphasis.
Yeah, we use that kind of activity to get our mayor of our village to realize there were so many vape shops opening up. The village board put in a moratorium that, the youth were taking pictures showing how there was a shop on every corner. So to open a vape shop in our neighborhood right now, there's quite a few barriers to that. There's only so many allowed. So we do those things. We send the postcards, which I think is amazing. But just wanted to show you, we also engage all levels of government and everybody we can. We try to get involved to give them a role. So we at the Sheriff's Department this year at that youth summit, and that's just a picture. They had the cart and they were just demonstrating some of the things that can cause distracted driving, and it was just it was such a hit. Everybody loved it, and the Sheriff's Department were proud to showcase all their equipment, so they came out. And then on the right is really, this is kind of special to us because those are puzzles that the 3 different workshops put together at the summit. And on the back of those pieces, they had, gone through this activity, speaking about all the traits that they are looking for in leaders and in themselves, and traits that they want to cultivate. And then when they put these puzzle pieces together, they flipped it over. There's our logo. And this is literally what they strive to do. They want to they want a voice, and they want us to listen to their voice. And then they want to create the environment that they believe in. So this was very meaningful for us. We just continue with that theme all the way through. And the next one. So this is part of our sustainability. This is our softball team. They have a strikeout drugs game each year. You know how teams, they raise money for Jump Rope for Heart and stuff like that. Well, our teams, we're starting to get them to adopt our programs. And this game each year is paid. And this is how we fund that middle school coalition that I talked about. They raise about $1,500, and that covers the teacher's stipend and a little money for supplies. So getting that kind of interaction, and we're in our 3rd year. We take $300 of the fundraise. They sell cupcakes. We have the Girl Scouts. We do environmental scans. We do all kinds of stuff at this game while the girls are playing. And, they do all the baking themselves. The girls do that. And they wear bandanas to signify that they're playing for us. And that connects them very directly to the middle school kids. We have them visit each other and talk about how, so if something happens to our coalition, we know that our middle school coalition will continue to be funded, which kind of gives me a nice sense of security, because we're under grants right now. So that's just something to think about, connecting the different organizations. So if you guys can put up some of your ideas, that's some of the things that we did. We also did the Mindful Monday. What else? What else, Christy?
For us, we do something called Block 9. So it's 9 days of summer. It's the major summer series. And before we used to do a summer series with a ton of field trips. And we realized, I don't know if any of you have gone through this, but it's really frustrating. You're getting these, paying for these big giant buses. And because we do free programming and it's a free field trip, sometimes there were no shows. So I have 2 buses and 1 bus is empty, and I was feeling like this is such a waste. So we decided to scratch it and really just try to implement more family-based events. So at that point, we started taking empty lots of land that were just not being used, and we made it like an urban beach. It was awesome. We brought in like 10 tons of sand, put a water slide, those blow-up kinds, and just did 9 days of different programming from a talent show to a barbecue. And it was amazing that we had over 2,000 residents come out in 9 days and neighbors meeting for the first time. So it's a really exciting way to come up with a lot of cool programming, but it's really about youth voice again and engaging youth voice. And I know we're coming up against the hour, so I want to, maybe we can continue this chat as we move on, but I want to respect everyone's time. Let's see, what else do we have? So we just wanted to end with a quote saying, you can never stop, and as older people, we have to learn how to take leadership from the youth. And I guess I would say that this is what I'm attempting to do right now. Angela Davis. So it's really, again, how important it is for us to include youth in the decisions that are going to be affecting them directly, and making sure that we're doing our due diligence as adults to guide the way for them to create the life they want. We know that, please know that Lorianne and myself are totally available to you all. So if you have questions and want to reach out to us, or you want some samples of the works that we've shared with you, we're happy to do that. Please feel free to keep our information, and Sean's going to be sending out this PowerPoint to everyone. And you can also follow us on our social media accounts to get a better idea about the kind of programming that we are doing. And Sean?
Thank you. Yes, and you could actually go back to the previous slide, Christy. My email is right there as well. I'll be following up really in just a few days with the PDF of the entire presentation. Please reach out if I can be of any service. Connect you with anyone. inside of CADCA. And also I saw just a couple questions that were more specific to someone's local experience, working on engaging youth and building coalitions. If we can provide you with any technical assistance, that is available through the Opioid Response Network. We also have coalition development internally to CADCA. We are here for you, so please let us know how we can help. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Lori. It's been a great webinar, and I'm so happy that everyone was able to dial in.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you all.
Yeah, thank you all.
All right, and with that, we'll be closing out the webinar for today. Thank you.
Have a great day.